What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here live. We're going to try this again. I was supposed to go live earlier for the NFC East, but we finally made it. Finally gone live. So I'm excited to break down the NFC East division, the New York G-Men, the Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, and of course the Washington football team. We're going to discuss every team, and we're going to get into their rosters and break down how they will do in 2020. Also, if anything happens with Jadeveon Clowney, I know right now that everybody's looking to see the reports of where he's going to go. Apparently, he's still working out some sort of contract with one of the teams he wants to sign with, whether that's the Saints or the Titans. He's still figuring that out. So if that does happen, I will try to break that down as well in this video. So keep me posted in the comments. That's your guys' job, all right? Let me know if Jadeveon Clowney officially signs, because we're not official yet, but there has been sources saying that he will sign with the Titans, or at least that's the leader in the pack. So let me know if that does happen here live. So before we get started, of course, I'm going to give you my predictions, break the rosters down, giving you my rankings for the offenses, the defenses, the players individually on both sides of the football for every team. Make sure that you do spike the like button and subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL previews and breakdowns just like this. Also, want to hear from you guys. Comment your opinion below. Let me know where and who, I should say, you think is going to win the NFC East and where you think your favorite team is going to land in this NFC East. First, second, third, let me know in the comment section below if you're watching this after the fact or if you're watching this live. So as we've been doing for these previews, when I do it live, all right, we are going to break a team down and then you're going to give me your thoughts on that team. All right, so after each breakdown of each team, leave that comment of what you think their record's going to be, okay? Cool. All right, let's get this started. So let's start off with, I feel, the team that is probably going to finish last. I think the NFC East is a unique division because I think it is the division that is a two-team race. I think there is no other division quite like this. I guess you could also say the AFC East is a little similar in that regard. Maybe some would argue the NFC South as well. But I think the NFC East is truly a two-team race with the other two teams clearly at the bottom in their own tier. It's like a split. It's like almost a four-team division that has an A tier and a B tier. That's kind of the way I'm looking at the NFC East in 2020. So let's start off with the Washington football team, the team that I feel is the worst in this division. All right, so the Washington football team, their offense to me, the biggest reason they are the worst in this division is their offense is the worst in pro football. You just look at the roster as we'll get into the depth chart. They're terrible, bro. They have nothing going for them outside of Terry McLaurin, who I think is one of the bright young stars at receiver in the league. And if you're in fantasy leagues and you haven't drafted yet, make sure you target Terry McLaurin because that guy is going to get targets himself. I mean, over 10 a game. He was a monster last year versus the best corners in the NFL, really showing out as a rookie. He was one of the more refined rookies I've ever seen at the receiver position entering the NFL in terms of his route running, in terms of just his all-around skill set, burning people with speed, beating people in terms of one-on-one matchups, and making plays on the football while the ball is in the air. And now I think his quarterback is going to be a little bit better, at least that position. They bring in a new coaching staff completely with the new coach, Ron Rivera, who was the Carolina Panthers coach a year ago and brought the Panthers with Cam Newton to the Super Bowl 50 versus the Broncos, and had that 15-1 season, brought the Panthers to multiple playoff appearances, and now he has his biggest task or his toughest task yet of trying to basically rebuild this Washington franchise. Not just rebuild it from a roster perspective, but a culture perspective and also a team name perspective. I mean, they haven't figured out what their new name is going to be, so he's kind of creating the first step of that next era of Washington football. So he brought along with him Scott Turner, who is Norv Turner's son and has been the OC of the Panthers the last, I think, 2 years, or at least him and Norv have been kind of splitting the duties. But Scott has been actually, I think, one of the more underrated offensive minds in the league the last couple of years. He's done a lot of really great things in terms of passing the football, getting his running back, Christian McCaffrey, so many touches and putting up elite numbers, right? And he's going to do some good things, I think, for Haskins' development and for this offense, Antonio Gibson in general. So let's take a look at the offense and the players at each position. So first, we start with the quarterback position, and both their quarterback, running back, I think, are both bottom 2 in the league. Haskins does definitely have more potential than being the 31st best quarterback in the NFL, but I don't think before this season he's there yet. I just don't think he is. He really didn't show a ton in his rookie season. He had moments at the end of the year. He was getting better. He was showing improvement, but it's going to be tough for him considering it's his second year, and really this is his first season going in as a starter. For him, surrounded by this supporting cast, to put up any sort of numbers that is going to be impressive. So I think with Haskins, it's going to be more about, okay, watch him with your eyes and see how good you think he is with your eyes. And when you watch Washington, see if he's making nice throws, or the receivers getting open, are they dropping the football? You know, are they helping him in any regard? Because it's going to have to be you separating Haskins from his current situation to determine actually how good this guy is. And then for Antonio Gibson, I think he's going to be in a more favorable situation. As I brought up, he's now going to be in that McCaffrey role for Turner's offense. So he's going to get the football a lot. As long as he's on the football field for a majority of the snaps, he's going to get catches out of the backfield, screens, easy run plays, and just funneled the football there. So the question I have about Gibson is, can he take the workload? Because in college, he wasn't a guy that touched the football that many times. He's not a proven college to pro commodity. He just isn't at the running back position, but he certainly, kind of similarly to Alvin Kamara, he showed like an explosiveness that was worthy of him being picked in like the 3rd or 4th round. And then the receiver position, obviously I brought up McLaurin, but outside of that, I mean, Gandy Golden I think is going to be one of the starters, or at least he'll turn into that as the season continues. Sims is, I guess, another younger guy that has some potential as a slot receiver, but outside of that, I don't see it. Scherf is by far their best offensive player at right guard. Their offensive line was actually better than people thought last year, but I expect it to regress this year just because they don't have a lot of upper echelon names on that line. And given that they'll be passing the ball more, running it less, I think that's going to put more pressure on the line to produce, and I don't really see it happening. And then tight end, I think it's the worst tight end position in the league. Like, it's below even starting caliber. Whether it's Sprinkle, Thomas, or anybody else getting the football there or playing that position, it's the worst in the league, in my opinion. So Washington, they definitely have the least amount of big names on this offense, the least amount of people that casual fans would know, and just in general, like, the worst, least talented offense in the NFL. So that's their offense. Now to their defense. Their defense is stronger. Their defense has a bright future, and their defense has a lot of pieces that I do really like. And if they are going to do better than we expect and put up some victories that we don't expect, then I think it's going to be because of the defense. So let's take a look at that defense. The defensive line is awesome. I think it's one of the best defensive lines in football. Given that they're a terrible team regardless, that defensive line will keep them in games. And that's the thing with this defense. This defense is going to, again, use your eyes, okay? Washington is not going to be a defense that at the end of the year is finishing 1st or 2nd in points allowed, all right? They're going to be a defense that is probably going to be closer to 10th to 12th because they're going to be good, but when it comes to their offense keeping them on the field constantly and probably putting them in bad situations, they just are not going to be a team that gives up few points. You need at least a decent offense to put up decent numbers defensively, right? So for Washington, they might be more of an eye test defense where you say, wow, that defense is really good, but they don't get enough credit or they don't finish high statistically. And I think it's going to be because of their pass rush. Chase Young, I already am confident enough to put him in the top 25 pass rushers in the NFL. Montez Sweat, another first-round pick on the opposite side, to me is top 40, had a decent rookie year. Not great, but decent. They also have Ryan Kerrigan, not even as a starter this year, probably being more of a rotation player, but he's still good. Matt Ioannidis is perhaps the most underrated defensive lineman in the NFL. Allen, just the same, is very good. And they also have the other kid that they drafted in the first round. I can't seem to remember his name. Oh, Daron Payne. So Daron Payne is like more of a big nose tackle. He'll probably play in base sets, but I think Ioannidis and Allen are more of the pass rushing variety. And you can get a little creative with Young, Sweat, and Kerrigan on the defensive line there. The linebackers, Reuben Foster has definitely top 20 potential, but he's just been inconsistent in terms of injuries and suspensions. And they also added Thomas Davis. They're actually quite deep at linebacker outside of just the top two. Their concern for me is their secondary. I do like Landon Collins as a box safety, but outside of him as a box safety, he's not a great cover guy, and their corners are average at best. They did add Fuller back, who used to play for Washington and had his best days in Washington. Davis is, to me, the worst free safety in the NFL. He's expected to start, at least as a starter, the worst starting free safety, I will say. So, yeah, Washington has great strengths on defense. They also have secondary that might hold them back, but when your defensive line is getting to the quarterback so quickly, it doesn't really matter how good your secondary is. So overall, Washington is a team with defensive potential. Offense is lacking potential, but I think you're just looking to see how Haskins and Gibson and McLaurin develop, and that's what I would be looking for as a Washington football fan. Ultimately, my prediction for this football team is 4-12. I could see 3-13. I've kind of been between 3-13, 4-12. I could see as good as 7-9. That's if Haskins develops quite nicely. McLaurin ends up being, an upper echelon receiver. Gibson is something special, and their defense plays to the level that I think it can play. Now, their floor is being the number one pick in the draft, where Haskins is terrible, and then you're looking at a team that might be picking a quarterback next year. So they probably don't have one of the higher ceilings in the league, probably one of the lower ceilings just because of the offensive talent surrounding their quarterback play and because of the unproven quarterback and because of the new coaching staff. So Washington, to me, while I do like aspects of their defense, I don't like a lot else. So 4-12 is my record prediction. All right, so guys, let me know what you think. Washington, what their record's going to be, how you think they're going to do this year. And where do I think Clowney is going to sign? Let's answer that. So it does look like he's going to sign with the Titans. There was reports that he did sign with the Titans, but according to Josina Anderson of ESPN, she talked to him and he's still fielding offers, according to her. So I don't think it's done yet. Let me know if there's an update on that situation. I don't think that's going to happen quite yet. I don't know. Maybe they're still working out contract details. Maybe he has agreed to go to the Titans, but he hasn't agreed on the money yet. Nicholas says, what do I think of Clowney going to the Titans? So if he does sign with the Titans, I like it a lot because like we said yesterday when I previewed the AFC South, I think they're a team that their biggest need is pass rush. So getting him in there is huge. And we'll talk about that in depth maybe later on in this video. Maybe I'll wrap this preview up by just doing a Clowney thing, and then I can post that separately for everybody else. Joseph says, I think that Washington will go 3-13, beating the Giants, Lions, and Panthers. They can go as high as 6-10 and as low as 2-14. Nicholas says 9-7 last in the division. Are you talking about Washington? GSP 9-7 is going to be last. GSP says, I think the football team is going 1-15, no offense, but don't have the defense or coach. Oh, don't have the defense or coaching to counter that. Also, Rivera has cancer. That's true. So that could hurt the team a lot. Plus, they have a tough season. Philly says 6-10. Philly fan D. Alex says 5-11. Clowney has officially signed with Tennessee. Let me check the Twitter real quick. Live update here. All right. Jadeveon Clowney. I don't see anything. Adam Schefter says that Clowney is expected to sign with the Titans. Expected. Do I see anything else here? Let me search out Clowney real quick. Jadeveon Clowney is expected to sign with the Titans. That was an hour ago. I don't know, man. I don't see anything confirmed yet. Pro Football Talk said the initial word is 1 year, $12 million for Clowney. Okay, we'll wait for the end of the breakdown, and then we'll get to it. So that's Washington. I think they're, again, a team with a defense that interests me, and I'll be watching and keeping my eye on, but overall, not much else that excites me. Haskins hopefully does well. I'm cheering for him. So the next team is the New York Giants. The New York G-Men are a team, as you can see, that actually their team ranks look worse than Washington's. Their offense is better, but their defense is much, much worse than Washington. So I think many Washington fans would argue that they will at least finish ahead of the Giants. But there's a reason behind why I like the Giants more than Washington, and it is the difference in offense. I do also think that they have strengths to their defense that are underrated. They do have major weaknesses as well, and they definitely could be the worst defense this year. But they do also have decent strengths on that defensive side of the ball. When we get there, I'll discuss it. Offensively, though, they have greater potential than just 25th. I mean, that's just the way I rank them, just because they have yet to prove it. But I am a big fan of Daniel Jones, and I think that might be the main difference between the Giants and Washington. I just feel like the Giants with Daniel Jones, that guy is a baller. I mean, I understand he had all these fumble issues. If there's anything that's easy to fix as a quarterback, it's fumbles, okay? It's fumbles. The thing that I actually read into that stat, the reason why he was so bad with fumbles, he holds onto the ball to make a play. And when you're on a bad team and you're a quarterback on a bad team, you need to make plays to win the game. So sometimes quarterbacks, are trying to do too much, right? That's been the case with a lot of quarterbacks. When they know they're a worse team, okay? When Daniel Jones goes on the field and he's playing the Cowboys, okay? In your mind, as an athlete, okay? Think, when you've been on a team, you know your worst team, okay? You are one of the better players on the team. What do you got to do? You got to shoot, you got to score, right? And with Daniel Jones, he's trying to make throws to make plays, right? Or he's trying to hold on the ball, create something for his team. So I don't like the criticism of Daniel Jones fumbling a lot. I don't love it. I hate it, okay? But Daniel Jones is mobile. Daniel Jones, I think, is sneaky good with his legs. I think you'll see that with Jason Garrett calling plays this year, which Jason Garrett, as much as you want to say about the clapper, about, his scheme and like his head coaching style, as an offensive coordinator, the guy has been successful, and he's been successful with all his quarterbacks. Dak has been great for the Cowboys and with Jason Garrett. Tony Romo was great with Jason Garrett. And I do think Daniel Jones is going to improve at least aspects to his game with Jason Garrett. Now, I think the biggest beneficiary of Jason Garrett calling the plays is going to be Saquon Barkley, because Ezekiel Elliott ran into the absolute ground with the Cowboys. And I do think Jason Garrett has a handle on the running game as well and how he wants to utilize his running backs. I think Saquon will be used in a similar fashion. Now, that's their offensive coordinator, not their head coach. Their head coach is Joe Judge. Joe Judge, a Patriot guy, all right, through and through. This is a blue-collar coach. This is a special teams coach and coordinator, and a guy that is tough, a guy that wants to bring toughness back to New York. And I think he's the perfect kind of personality for New York and the Giants together, not just the team. I think Giants fans will like him, and I think that eventually he'll have success with New York. It won't be this year, but I think eventually he will. Sometimes, he's not the big, sexy offensive coordinator name that everybody wants, like the Sean McVays or the Kyle Shanahans of the world. But I think he's going to have success. He's going to bring that special teams up a level. And he's going to bring toughness and organization and structure to this organization that's been lacking it since, I would say, Tom Coughlin has left. So I think that he's going to improve this team. Not right away, but eventually. And I think when you look at what they've done in terms of personnel, I haven't loved it, what they've been doing, but I do like some of their players. So let's get into the offense first. So obviously, I love Saquon. He is the best running back in the NFL to me, the most explosive, and I think he is going to have the best year at the position. Daniel Jones, to me, is already a top 20 quarterback and only rising. Their offensive line, they have a first-round pick in Thomas, who I think right away is going to be pretty good. And I think he would have been even better at right tackle, but putting him at left tackle, obviously he played left tackle in college, so I don't think he'll have much of a worry with that. I do like Hernandez. He is kind of inconsistent, especially as a pass blocker, but as a run blocker, as a mauler, he's a guy that can open up space for Saquon. Gates is a huge question mark at center. I think he's going to be the guy at center. I mean, there's kind of a competition going on there. Giants fans can let me know if it's him or somebody else. I think Pulley, and they also signed their starter from a year ago. They're all in competition. Kevin Zeitler is still really, really good, especially as a pass blocker. But my big issue is losing Nate Solder is probably going to force Cameron Fleming into action, who struggled with Dallas, was decent with New England when he played for New England. So Joe Judge, maybe with, Joe Judge, and Jason Garrett knows him because he was in Dallas. So maybe he's better than 64. I have him as the worst starting tackle in the NFL right now. So maybe he'll be better than that, but I don't see him being much better than a below average right tackle. He's decent as a mover or a run blocker, though. He's worse as a pass blocker. Evan Ingram, if he stays healthy, he is a top 10 talent at the position. I really do like Slayton. I think he has a lot of potential, and he could finish much higher than 52nd at that position. And their receivers, as you can see, are all kind of clumped together. Golden Tate is regressing, but he actually looked pretty explosive still last year. Hopefully he can stay healthy. And I do believe he'll stay in the slot, but Sterling Shepard is also a slot receiver himself, who I rank as the best receiver going into the season in terms of, I've just seen the most out of him. I don't think he has the highest ceiling. That would be Slayton. But I think right now he is probably the best. So that's their offense. They have a lot of potential because of their skill position talent, but I do think that offensive line might keep them back from being one of the better units in the league. So defensively, they are shifting to more of a New England Patriot kind of defensive style, with them bringing in, of course, the new head coach who's from New England. So he wants to run a Belichickian kind of defense, and they still have a long way to go when it comes to building that with their personnel. Similarly to Miami a year ago, I don't think they had enough assets to bring in the players that they like. Now Miami has done that with Brian Flores, and we'll see if Judge is able to do that this next offseason. Not this offseason, but next offseason. So, and same thing with Patricia. Patricia needed a couple of seasons to build his defense the way he wanted it as well. So let's take a look at that defense. The defense did lose some pieces already. They lost their starting linebacker, David Mayo, who I thought had a really underrated season a year ago. Great tackler and great run defender. So he'll be replaced by Connolly. And they also lost their rookie second-round pick at safety, McKinney, who could have played nickel for them. They did sign Logan Ryan. I thought that was a fabulous signing, especially not just because of his talent, not just because of his ability as the 12th best nickel corner in the game, but also because of his intelligence, his confidence in the scheme, and his leadership ability is very strong. He was great for Tennessee last year, but I think when you look at him as a nickel corner, he does more than just cover. His strength actually isn't covering, I would say, like man on man. His strength is tackling, his strength is blitzing, and his strength is his awareness and his ability to make plays. Julian Love and Peppers aren't the worst safety combo in the league. They do have some potential as both still young players. They're both total opposites, which I do like. Martinez is a solid addition to this linebacking core, but he is definitely not as good as his tackle numbers suggest. James Bradbury might have been one of the more underrated signings of the offseason. I think when you look at what he did in Carolina, he was facing, a lot of the best receivers week in and week out, whether that was Tampa Bay or Atlanta or even New Orleans, right? And Bradbury did a pretty good job. If you look at his stats, look at his completion percentage rating allowed, he's done a decent job as the number one corner in Carolina. It was more about the other guys at cornerback that were giving up all the plays in Carolina. But Bradbury, in a more man-to-man based scheme, I think will be a better player. And then Logan Ryan, again, you guys are mentioning how he should be higher. Nicholas says a top 5 nickel. The reason I don't have him in that area is just because of his coverage ability. I think if he was better in man-to-man like he used to be, he was better when he was younger, but he's getting older. I think I'd have him a little bit higher. And I think if you are a top 10, top 5 nickel, you're going to be signed earlier in the offseason than when he was signed. And then their other cornerback position, due to their weird offseason that they've had at that position, they're now starting probably Haley on the outside, but I'm not exactly sure. Their defensive line is probably the strength and maybe the most underrated run defense in the NFL. I think they're going to be very strong in that regard this year with Leonard Williams, who they've re-signed. He played really well at the end of last year for them. Marcus Golden was a sack machine for them last year. Lorenzo Carter, I expect a better season out of this year and a big progression from him. Dexter Lawrence looked like a good pick last year, and that's not even including, I think, BJ Hill, who they also have, Dalvin Tomlinson. They got a lot of big boys on this defensive line. So when it comes to running the football, you're going to struggle versus the Giants. But passing the football, they might be the worst pass defense in the NFL. So the Giants, they have weaknesses, they have their strengths, but they'll be a lot more fun to watch than Washington. And maybe that doesn't mean victories, but when looking at the quarterback difference between Jones and Haskins, in my opinion, and when looking at Saquon, a guy that can take over a football game, their receivers, their talent offensively, and yes, both teams have different coaching staffs. I do lean New York because they have the better offense. So I'm going to go with the Giants in third over Washington. And my prediction for the Giants is going to be 5-11. I think the Giants could finish anywhere. My ceiling is 10-6. I think their ceiling is quite high, even potentially a wild card team because of the potential year 2 jump of Daniel Jones and because Saquon could carry the team on his back, as well as maybe defensive players, that defensive line having some breakout candidates. But I think ultimately it's going to be between 5-4-ish wins to like 7 wins. I think probably around 5 to 7 wins makes sense to me for the Giants. I think their division at the top is difficult, and you look at their schedule, and it's probably easier than years past. But their floor is 3-13. I would think if their defense is the worst in the league, they have a chance to be very bad. And honestly, if you're the Giants, I think it's better off that you do pick another year in the top 10 just to add a big-time defensive playmaker or offensive lineman to your team. I think that's the way to go. And ultimately, I think with the Giants is just seeing the progression of Daniel Jones and the progression of guys like Slayton and some of the guys on defense, they're younger guys, and then the coaching staff. I think if I was a Giants fan, I'd be looking at their coaching staff very closely and don't necessarily judge them off wins and losses, but judge them off of how competitive they are and how well they fight on Sundays. That's what I would be judging them off of. Similarly to the way I looked at Miami a year ago, saying, okay, this team's not as talented as that team. But they gave them a game, and they were fighting hard every week. So that's what I look for in a team that's not necessarily amazingly talented. So that's the Giants. We got 4-12, 2-14, 8-8, 7-9, 6-10 for Nicholas. He has Washington at 4-12. Timothy has the Eagles at 15-1. We'll get to the Eagles real quick here. What else? AJ has them with 4-12. GSP has 1-15. That's wild, bro. Yes, the NFC North, hopefully I'll be able to do right after this. If not, it will probably be tomorrow, but we'll see. Joseph says, I think the G-Men will go 5-11. I like your prediction, but beating Washington, Cincinnati, Arizona, Cleveland, and Dallas in Week 17. They are at best 8-8 and at worst 3-13. Is Joe Judge a head coach? I believe he'll be a solid head coach for them. I'm still skeptical, although, I'm a Patriots fan. I believe in him. According to most people that know him, they think he's head coaching quality. And yes, it's a little different to hire a special teams guy. But hey, John Harbaugh was a special teams guy. That seemed to work out. So let's go with, and I also think, at a certain point, the offensive guys, all the good ones are already head coaches. Like, are you just going to keep going into that same offensive-minded guy? Like, eventually you're just going to hire a bad offensive coach as your head coach. Like, I would rather at this point hire the best defensive guy on the market or the best special teams guy on the market to at least get an edge in that side of the game with the head coaching qualities of leadership than hiring the 16th best offensive coach that's out there. Like, personally, that's just me. So let's get to the next team, which is the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Philadelphia Eagles, I have finishing, sorry Eagles fans, second in the NFC East. And I know there's going to be a million comments saying I'm an absolute idiot because I always get Eagles fans coming after me. And it's all good, but I have both their offense and defense as the 12th best in the NFL. I think there's really good aspects to both units, but there's also really big question marks about both units, making it very interesting. So also, the Eagles already have a bunch of injuries, which I've also taken into account heading into the season. And with the Eagles, we know that they always kind of, just like Dallas in a way, they kind of always disappoint in the regular season. Like, the Eagles are a team the last few years, they've made the playoffs, but I mean, we've been picking this team to do big things, and they really haven't. I mean, the Eagles, I picked them, I think, to go to the Super Bowl last year, and like before the season started, and they lost in the wild card game. Like, they were 9-7, I think, right? So, yeah. I mean, like, that's just disappointing. Like, everyone talks about how the Cowboys were supposed to be this great team, but I didn't pick the Cowboys to go to the Super Bowl last year. I picked the Eagles, and the Eagles disappointed me. So, but they've made some improvements, and let's take a look at those improvements with their roster. So let's start with their offense. Their offensive line does worry me more than most seasons. Of course, they've already lost their left tackle and their right guard. So Brandon Brooks out for the year, one of the 2 or 3 best guards in the NFL. And then they lost their left tackle as well in Andre Dillard, who is a first-round pick. And he'll be replaced by Jason Peters. Peters was supposed to play right guard, but I think he's actually going to have to work out his contract. I don't think he's very happy that he signed to be a guard and now he's going to be a tackle. I don't think he's very happy about that one. But yeah, they'll work that out. Jason Kelce, monster. Lane Johnson, monster. 2 of the best players at their position. Zach Ertz is still a top 3, top 5 tight end at the very least. Deshaun Jackson, I think, is going to do a lot of good things for this team, just in terms of spreading the field, because this team lacked a lot of just overall speed last year. Just, they were slow on offense. So having Deshaun Jackson back and healthy, he can still run, and that's what he'll give this offense. A downfield threat, but more so a threat that a defense needs to be aware of. And then Jalen Reagor, same thing. I mean, he can stretch the field. He's a burner. They tried to bring in Marquise Goodwin, the Olympic sprinter, and he's not playing this year. They also drafted Hightower, who's another speedy guy on the outside. And Alshon Jeffrey, I have no idea what's going on with him. I don't know if he'll even see the field this year because of the weird injuries that he's had, and I don't know. They might actually end up releasing him at some point. And Dallas Goedert is, to me, I know this might be a hot take, a top 8, top 7 tight end in the NFL. Carson Wentz is a top 10 quarterback who's a baller, can make plays outside the system, has a great arm, great on the move, very good athlete. Miles Sanders is one of the more young, underrated backs in the NFL and probably about to have his breakout season. He's really impressed me how he's developed into a really good receiver at the running back position. Offensively, they're solid. They have a really good scheme. I think Doug Peterson does a very good job of helping his players out. And they do a really good job when they have those injuries of overcoming those injuries and still being able to make the most out of limited talent, like we saw last year with guys like Greg Ward playing receiver. And Wentz is also a guy that can elevate talent around him. So that's all good stuff, but I don't see them being like a top 10 offense because they are limited at receiver. And when you're limited at receiver, then yeah, that's probably why they're not top 10. If they had one go-to guy at that position, I'd probably put them in the top 10 because they do have the quarterback, the running back, the scheme, and the tight ends to make it happen. But I do think people might underrate their offense because their tight ends are so good and they do play a majority, 2 tight end sets, and they don't love to run, a lot of receiver sets. So people just strictly looking at their receivers probably are underestimating their offense, but people not giving enough credit to their shaky receiver position are probably overrating their offense. So that's the way I look at it. Defensively, the Eagles are very talented. They have a really good defensive line. I mean, it might be the best in the NFL this year when it comes to Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, Derek Barnett, Fletcher Cox. Malik Jackson apparently is having a very good camp. Fletcher Cox is still one of the best in the game. I think Javon Hargrave was a huge top 20 addition for their interior line. But I think the biggest additions they've made were the cornerback position with Nickel Roby-Coleman, and then Darius Slay at the outside cornerback, who to me is a top 10 corner in the NFL, and I think will have a better season than he did in 2019 with the Lions. And Avonte Maddox is actually decent. He's a decent number 2 corner. He's probably in the middle of the league in terms of number 2 corners. He's performed better than most of the cornerbacks, especially because he's had to cover a lot of number 1 receivers. That's where he's maybe been taken advantage of, but he's good as a number 2. Like, this is what's going to help their secondary, is moving those corners that were starters before into spots where they're probably more likely in terms of their talent. Rodney McLeod's still good, but not great. I think he might be slightly overrated by fans. Jalen Mills is moving to safety, so that will be interesting to see and watch. I don't know how it's going to work out. Maybe it allows them a little bit more speed in the back end, a little bit more man-to-man ability. And their linebacker position is definitely the concern. Jerry, I believe in. I think he can be a starting caliber linebacker. But outside of him, I don't really see a lot, especially in terms of sub-package defense. But I do want to see how Malik Jackson looks. I want to see how Hargrave looks in this defense and how that impacts everybody around them. But you also have to be concerned that Cox and Graham are getting another year older, as well as Roby-Coleman, who they're counting on big time as their new nickel cornerback. So defense has strengths, but also equally weaknesses. When you look at the Eagles, I think they're a really good organization, a really good coaching staff with Schwartz on defense, Peterson offensively, and as a head coach. They've proven year after year that despite limited talent, they can overcome it. Despite injuries, they can overcome it. I think Carson Wentz, as long as he's healthy, will have a good season, and he is a baller. So all that put together, I'm going to say that the Eagles are 9-7. The Eagles, once again, finished 9-7. I think their ceiling is 12-4. 12-4, if their offense, they can get more out of their receiver position. I would say that is the biggest thing. And if their offensive line can be okay without the guys that they're missing. Defensively, I expect their secondary to be much better this year. I don't think that their linebacker position is going to be fantastic, but I think they can get by with one of the worst linebacking positions in the NFL. And I do think they are a playoff team. I have them currently as my 7th seed in the NFC, just edging out a team in the NFC West. When we'll get to that. But I think the Eagles are 9-7 right now. And the reason why I have them in the playoffs, probably over some of these teams that have maybe more potential than them, is just Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson. I think those guys have proven to me year after year that you cannot count them out. And that's why I have the Eagles in the playoffs again and at 9-7. So, yeah, Eagles, second place in the NFC East, 9-7 record. Guys, give me your prediction. So, some people also agree with me with 9-7. Some have 7-9 as well. What else here? Curtis says, okay, 9-7. I wonder what the Eagles fans think of my pick here, because I know they're not going to necessarily be very happy. Julio says Dallas's D-line is going to sack Carson Wentz 3 or 4 times in those 2 games. Sean says playoffs just so my Hawks can wash them again. I'm trying to see what's going on with Clowney. Ten and 6. Alex has them going 10-6. Bears are better than the Bills. Accept it, says Nicholas. That's not even close to true. 11-5. Sports with AJ says. Mitch, I have 9-7 for the Eagles, says Nicholas. 10-6 for Curtis. 10-6 for Philly fan. I agree. 9-7 says Michael. 8-8 for Julio. 12-4 for Mr. Singh. I fully agree. I have them 9-7, says GSP. They have an okay offense, a great defensive line, but no defense outside of that. Kevin Durkant has the Eagles winning like 6 to 8 games. They're going to suck. Wow. Dylan says 11-5. Throwing Dots has 10-6. Big Blue has 8-8. Caesar has 9-7. Brokey has 10-6. All right. 8-8 for Joseph. Too many weaknesses. All right, let's get to the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowgirls, as Eagles fans would call them. So let's go to the Cowboys. And you guys, you Eagles fans are going to be mad right now. You're going to be mad. All right, Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys, I have finishing first in the NFC East, bouncing back from a absolutely disappointing performance in 2019, where the Cowboys were one of the best bad teams I've ever seen in my life. They finished top 10 in offense and defense and still managed to miss the playoffs, which I think is only ever done like once or twice in the history of the NFL. I think the other time was the Chargers because they're the Chargers, but the Cowboys did it as well. And the Cowboys, I have as the fourth best, a top 5 offense. You could argue between the top 5, but I have the fourth best offense, and I have as a top 15 defense. I've moved them up a little bit because of the good things that we've heard out of Trevon Diggs and camp at cornerback, and also the signing of Everson Griffin, which I think significantly helps their pass rush. So I do like their defense. They do rank one spot below Eagles because I think the Eagles D-line just being so good all around does put them a little bit ahead, and also having that number 1 corner in Darius Slay. But their offense is significantly better, I do believe, at least in terms of talent. Now, I think the biggest thing and the biggest difference between the Cowboys of 2019 and 2020 is their coaching staff. I think Mike McCarthy is going to make a huge difference. I'm buying into what he is selling. I think his year off of football is going to make a big difference in terms of how he approaches the game. He's always been good in terms of his ability to manage a game, timeouts, challenges, situational football, which I think is the main thing that the Cowboys have been bad at. They've been terrible at the end of games. They've been terrible in situations, when to go for it, when to punt it, at the end of halves, at the end of the game. I think McCarthy is going to significantly improve the awareness of this team. And then I think they needed a new voice. I think McCarthy is a good motivator. I think he's a better team guy in terms of just leading a group of men than Jason Garrett. I think there was a certain point where the players just got sick of Jason Garrett. They got sick of the same voice. And I think McCarthy's going to come in there and improve this team from that perspective. Defensively, I think Nolan is going to be much better for them. He was a former head coach in this league for the 49ers. Wasn't super successful there, but as a defensive coach, he's proven to be successful. He took one of the worst units in New Orleans at linebacker to one of the best units at linebacker, so he did good things there, and he's going to bring a similar scheme, but he's going to touch it up and bring a little bit more complexity, I think, to that defense. So, and one thing I hated about their defense was how simple it was, how predictable it was. And I think they're going to be a little bit more tricky. And I think that's a good thing for them because you can't always rely on talent. Eventually, you're going to get out-schemed and beat. And there's no reason that a defense with all the talent that the Cowboys had a year ago should be getting beat by this Eagles offense that was fielded a year ago. So now that the coaching staffs are more even, I think the edge now goes to Dallas. While last year, the Eagles were so much better in the coaching department that it overcame any talent deficiencies that they had. Now, let's take a look first at their offense, which I know a lot of people are excited about. You look at Dak Prescott, who I have as the 10th best quarterback in the NFL. He could do things with his arm and his legs. Not the biggest arm in the league, but he's improved every season as an intelligent quarterback at the line of scrimmage, making decisions. He's improved there. I still think they need to do more with his legs. I think Kellen Moore in his second season, Dak in his second season with Moore will be very good for him. Zeke, you might see that he is a little low. And I just noticed that I put a Z because I just write his name as Zeke, which I think a lot of you guys do. But Ezekiel Elliott is his actual name, so it should be EE. But regardless, he's number 7 for me. He is regressing, in my opinion. I think he needs to show that he still has the explosive ability that he used to have. I haven't seen it in a couple of seasons, but he is still very good. He's still one of the best inside runners in the game. He's still one of the best, probably short yardage running backs in the NFL. He just hasn't shown me that same explosive ability that I've seen out of Saquon or Nick Chubb or Dalvin Cook. So that's why I move him down compared to those guys. But he is really good, and he is all around good. He can catch the football as well. Their receiver position might be the best in the NFL when it comes to their top 3. Amari Cooper. I love Amari Cooper's game. I think he's a fabulous route runner. He has very good hands, and he has great speed, which scares defenses. But he needs to stay healthy, and he needs to be more consistent. Hopefully he can be with the improvement scheme-wise. That's a big deal to being consistent at receiver. Michael Gallup could be one of the 20 best receivers in the NFL this year after having a fantastic season last year on a breakout season. CeeDee Lamb could be much better than 40. Of course, he's only a rookie, so I can't rank him much higher, but I did rank him as the highest rookie coming out of the draft, and he was my favorite receiving rookie out of the draft. Tyron Smith and La'el Collins are the best, or the second best behind New Orleans tackle duo in the NFL. Both are fantastic. Again, Tyron Smith, though, has had injury issues. Connor Williams is their biggest weakness on the offensive line, in my opinion. Looney is a bottom tier center, but he started a whole season before for them, so I don't think it will be a big deal. I could see, though, Tyler Badish, I think is his name, or Badass, whatever you want to say his name is. But he was a third-round pick out of Wisconsin, I believe, and he will probably be pretty pro-ready. So if they feel Looney isn't playing up to par, then they could replace him with their third-round pick. But Connor Williams, I just need to see improvement in. He was a high-drafted rookie a couple of years ago, and he's played fine. Like, he hasn't been bad or anything, but he hasn't been great. So you could see improvement there. That's kind of nitpicking. Blake Jarwin apparently has been having a great training camp, so maybe he could be higher than 27, but he's another guy that we really haven't seen much out of, so I can only rank him so high. Let's take a look at their defense. Their defense is probably the one with the question marks. Everyone knows Dallas is going to score points, but I think when they score so many points, they're going to put pressure on opposing defenses, which is going to help in the process their defense. So let's take a look at that defense. The defense, they have one of the best linebacking combos in the NFL. Leighton Vander Esch did get injured last year, and I had to move him down because of that. He also didn't play the way he played in his rookie year last year. Their defensive line, I think, is a little underrated now with Everson Griffin, DeMarcus Lawrence on the edge, 2 top 30 guys, and then Tyron Crawford, to me, is my favorite guy on that line in terms of his versatility, where he could play outside or he can move inside on pass rushing downs. Dontari Poe's a big run-stuffing guy. It sucks that McCoy went down with injury, but at least they did replace him with Griffin. Aldon Smith is back, and he's on this roster. Randy Gregory, I believe, is back and will be on this roster. They drafted a young promising rookie, I believe Gallimore, the Canadian. He might be pretty good as a rotation piece. And their secondary, it's not going to be as good without Byron Jones, but I still think it will be solid. It won't be terrible by any means because I do believe in Awuzie, and I like Trevon Diggs for a rookie, and Jordan Lewis has been a good nickel player. They did release Clinton Dix. I wonder if that means they're going to go after Earl Thomas at free safety, but right now they have Darian Thompson, who apparently outplayed Clinton Dix in camp, so that might be a good sign. And Xavier Woods is an underrated strong safety. He can do a little bit of everything. But I think this defense is not one of the best in the game, but it's certainly very solid. And with improved coaching, they can be just as good as they were a year ago, even without Byron Jones. So, Cowboys, I like a lot. They have a lot of talent. Once again, they're one of the 5 most talented rosters in the NFL. and they've improved their coaching significantly and their special teams, by the way, with Greg Zuerlein being their new kicker. That's something that hasn't really been mentioned, but the Cowboys lost 1 or 2 games based on kicking alone last year, so that's huge. So Cowboys, first place, and my prediction for them, people are going to be shocked here. I have the Cowboys at 12-4. I think they're going to be a double-digit win team this year. And the reason I have them so high is I think they have the easiest schedule out of any of the top-tier NFC teams or any of the top-tier teams in the NFC that I deem to be top-tier or elite. They have the easiest schedule, in my opinion, when I look at the teams in week-to-week matchups. And I think, you look at the Saints and the Bucks in the NFC South, they're going to beat up on each other. The Seahawks and the 49ers in the NFC West are going to beat up on each other to a certain degree, the Cardinals as well. And then the NFC North really doesn't have a relevant top-tier team. So I think the Cowboys have a very good chance to finish as the first seed in the NFC, or at least a top 3 seed in the NFC. So I do like the Cowboys a lot this year, and they just have too much talent to disappoint 2 years in a row. And over the past few years, they've kind of been like 1 year in the playoffs, 1 year out of the playoffs, 1 year in the playoffs. They need to find that consistency. And this is the year that they get back to the playoffs. So let's check it out. What are people saying here? Dakota says, all Cowboys fans, we got Dak, we got Zeke, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup. We're going to win the NFC East, and we're going to the Super Bowl. 6 rings, 6 rings, 6 rings. Don says, hey guys, after the Bears lose next week, Nick will be singing a different song. Yes, totally true. I already tweeted when I saw the Mitch Trubisky that is going to start. I said Lions are 1-0. So there we go. What do we have here? Kevin has Layla as top 10. I think my number 10 tackle was Taylor Lewan, but I could be wrong. Not sure. Miles says, talent has never stopped the Cowboys from falling. Ultra says, Dak at 10 is fair. I have him at 11 right now. Zeke, I'd have at 6. Julio says he still had 1,000 yards last year. Yes, he did. He was productive. Not saying he wasn't. He's still good. He's top 7. That's really good. Don, we'll get to Matt Stafford when we get to Matt Stafford, okay? Nicholas says Clowney to the Titans is official, so I guess I should talk about that real quick. Guys, give me your prediction for the NFC East. So to recap, I have the Cowboys at number 1, 12-4. Eagles at 9-7 in second, but in the playoffs as the 7th seed. My number 3 is the Giants at 5-11, just edging out I almost said the Skins, which I don't mean. The Washington football team in 4th place at 4-12. So it's clearly a tier A, tier B for the NFC East. Curtis, as an Eagles fan, says Cowboys will go 0-16. Avery has 10-6. Philly has 10-6. Cowboys 11-5, Mr. Singh. 12-4 says Sports with AJ. Curtis says 12-4 is insane. 10-11 wins for Elliott. 14-2 is the ceiling. Says Dead Whale. Philly says, you forgot to mention Collins is out because he's fat. Alex says 11-5. Cowboys missing the playoffs at 8-8, says Nicholas. What else? 13-3, says Joseph. Improved offense, coaching, and special teams with a solid defense. They'll lose to Seattle, Baltimore, and the Giants. Turtle says Cowboys are better than the Eagles. There is zero debate. Michael says 11-5 or 10-6. GSP says, I think the Cowboys are going 14-2, a top 3 offense, a top 5 defensive line, a top 3 linebacking core, much improved coaching, a super easy schedule, and a motivated Prescott will be unstoppable. All right, so I gave you my NFC East breakdown. Let's now break down Jadeveon Clowney. Let's do that, shall we? Let me throw up my quick social media plugs for you guys. Before I do break down Jadeveon Clowney, make sure you do Gronk Spike the like button and subscribe to The Bottom Line View for more NFL bids and previews just like this. Also, comment your opinion below. All right, so let's get to Jadeveon Clowney. I'm going to just look this stuff up. And unfortunately, guys, based on the time right now, I probably won't be able to do NFC North today, so I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'll do NFC North and NFC South tomorrow, I think. And then NFC West the next day. So I have a fantasy draft at 6:30. That's why I can't do it. So let's take a look at these tweets. Jadeveon Clowney has told Titans officials he plans to sign with them per sources. He also texted with his new teammates his enthusiasm for joining the team. Clowney is expected to travel to Nashville soon. I don't see any contract details. Let me see if I can find contract details if those have come out yet. This is good, though. This is good. I don't think there's any contracts yet. Whale says Pollard didn't do anything last year, though, right? Pollard is talented. I think he can contribute to that team. All right, let's do this. So instead of NFC North, we're breaking down Clowney here live. All right, let's do it. Jadeveon Clowney has finally made his decision to come back to the NFL and his decision on what his new team for 2020 is going to be. Jadeveon Clowney has signed with the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are a team that I broke down in my AFC South preview. I said their number one problem, their number one need is edge rusher. They need a guy that can get after the quarterback. They need a guy on the edge of their defense that can disrupt, make plays, stuff the run, and just bully offensive linemen. And that is exactly what you are getting in Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney is a physically imposing monster of a man. Jadeveon Clowney is, shall I say, a freak on the football field. I mean, this guy, you can move him from the edge to the inside linebacker. You can rush him from there. You can place him on the defensive line at the end of the line to get after the edge of the quarterback. You can probably put him at D tackle. He's that strong. Jadeveon Clowney is one of those players that is just uniquely gifted as an athlete. He's so strong, but yet has great explosive ability. Now, why has Jadeveon Clowney taken so long to sign, guys? Well, it's been reported that it's because of Jadeveon Clowney. He didn't want to sign yet. He's just like, I don't want to sign. I don't want to go to camp. I'm going to be honest. Like, there was reports literally saying, I don't want to go to training camp. Like, I don't want to go through those practices. So I'm going to hold out. Just know I'm still in the market. I'm interested in playing, but pay me in August. Pay me in September, okay? I don't want to go to your training camp. And maybe that's part of the issue, why it was so limited of a market for him. Maybe that's part of the problem, because I think a lot of people look at him and say, ooh, he's not willing to go to training camp. Is he passionate enough to be on our team, in our system, in our organization? Like, do we want a guy that is kind of a hired mercenary? That's kind of the way I look at Jadeveon Clowney. At this point, the guy's a hired gun. He's going out there to sack quarterbacks and to disrupt. You pay the man and he'll do his job. But I don't think Jadeveon Clowney, and maybe I'm speaking out of terms here, but this is the way I see it from the reports that I've been given. I think he's a guy that he does this as a job, okay? This is his job. Playing football, he's really good at it, and he wants to make money doing it. A lot of money. And he doesn't necessarily care what team it's for. He doesn't necessarily care if they're good, they're bad. He doesn't necessarily care that much for the other stuff. He doesn't necessarily go out there for the passion of the game. Okay, this guy's not Brett Favre. He's going out there to sack quarterbacks and make money. That's what he's doing. And the thing for the Titans is, I think it's fantastic for them that they now have a guy that's familiar with their defense, right? Jadeveon Clowney used to play with Mike Vrabel as his coach. Mike Vrabel was his defensive coordinator in Houston, I believe, and also, I know for sure, his linebacker coach. So Clowney is familiar with Mike Vrabel. And Mike Vrabel will now be taking on more of a role as a defensive coach for this team, being that Dean Pease is gone. So Dean Pease is gone, but Vrabel's still there. And now that it's going to be more of Vrabel's defense, more of Vrabel's approach, I think that's going to suit more Clowney now because he knows, okay, Clowney's good at this. You know, I know Jadeveon can do this very well, but he's not so good at this. So right away, without ever seeing him practice, that's the advantage the Titans had over every other team to sign him because Clowney knew that if I go to Tennessee, I'm going to be used correctly. If I sign with New Orleans, I don't know if I'm going to be used correctly, right? So I think that was the difference for him between Tennessee and New Orleans was just like, okay, I know this guy. Like, I know the way that he runs things, and I know the way that he schemes things, and I agree with that, and I'm going to be able to get the best out of myself so that maybe next year I can sign that 3-year, $60 million contract or whatever. So part of the other issue, I think, with Clowney has been his injury history. He has had a long injury history dating back to his college days. And I think that's also a reason he hasn't been signed earlier, as well as the fact that he just didn't want to be. I think that's a big reason he hasn't gotten huge money. He's more one-year contract kind of guy. But just for granted, he's an impact player. I still think he's a top, at the very least, impact on the game than just strictly sacks. This is a guy that is a better run defender than pass rusher. So he fits Tennessee from that regard because Mike Vrabel, he's a Patriot, right? He's a Belichick guy, right? He's a set the edge first, get after the quarterback second. He's do your job first, sack the quarterback second. So in that regard as well, he's going to be able to fit into the scheme and what they want to do. So I really like this because I think he's going to be utilized correctly. I know that for a fact. I think this upgrades the team significantly in a position that was their weakness on their roster. And now you could take some pressure off a younger guy like Harold Landry on the opposite side. I'm not sure if Vic Beasley is still going to be on the team because he's had a weird, shaky offseason training camp. I don't even know what's going on with him. Correa is still there, and guys like that. Rashaan Evans can also rush off the edge as well. So this just gives them another athlete. I think part of the issue with Tennessee was not just pass rush, but also just speed and athleticism in general. So that's going to upgrade the entire defense up front, and it does help the loss of losing Jarrell Casey as well. So, yeah, I think this is an excellent move, and it puts the Titans right into the conversation of playoffs for me, because yesterday when I broke down the AFC South, I said they're a borderline playoff team, they're a borderline wildcard team, or division winner to me, but I wasn't quite sure because one of the reasons was pass rush. So now that they have Clowney, that's going to help them a lot. So, Jadeveon Clowney to the Titans. Let me know, Titans fans, how you feel about the move. And if you haven't already, Gronk spike that like button and subscribe to the Bottom Line View if you enjoyed this breakdown of Jadeveon Clowney. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the move. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you love Clowney? Do you hate Clowney? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys. Thanks for watching this NFC East breakdown and this Jadeveon Clowney breakdown. Again, guys, I'll see you tomorrow for the NFC North breakdown, for the NFC North video preview, and I'll probably also be doing the NFC South, so that's September 6th, tomorrow, Sunday, September 6th. Tune in for the NFC North, NFC South breakdown. For the NFC West, and the final division that I'll be breaking down, maybe arguably the most competitive one, I'll be doing that on the 7th. And then we'll get the last few videos out, including full season-long predictions, and as well Week 1 predictions. Week 1's already here, guys. That's absolutely insane to think about. So thanks for tuning in. Again, if you enjoyed Gronk, spike that like button. It's Mitch. Peace.